some bees, some hearts, some secrets, and some pigs today on another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we're going through Matthew chapter 5 through 7, also known as the Sermon on the Mount. Now tomorrow we're going to go through Matthew chapter 8 verses 1 through 13 and also Luke chapter 7. Now some things to keep in mind here as we go through the Sermon on the Mount. The verse 1 here says, when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute before we get started and put our minds in the right perspective here. Jesus ascended a mountain when he saw the crowds because he deemed that the mountainside was a much better setting for teaching a large group. Now, his delivery of God's message from a mountaintop provides yet another parallel with the ancient Moses. Greek words translated he went up on the mountain are used 3 times in the Greek Old Testament, and all 3 fall in the section describing Moses' ascent of Mount Sinai. Now this fits with Matthew's repeated theme of drawing out parallels between Moses and Jesus. For instance, Jesus' birth paralleled several events that surrounded Moses' birth. Herod attempted to kill the infant Jesus, of course, by ordering the slaughter of all of Bethlehem's boys in Matthew chapter 2, much as Pharaoh ordered the execution of newborn male Israelites in Exodus chapter 1. Furthermore, the angel pronouncement that danger had passed, those who intended to kill the child are dead in Matthew chapter 2 verse 20 is a very clear echo of Exodus chapter 4 verse 19, where it says all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. So, since Matthew introduces the Sermon on the Mount by highlighting the connection between Jesus and Moses, the Beatitudes, as they start in verse 3 here, should probably be read against the backdrop of Moses' teachings, right? Well, yes, but that is going to be another study for another video at another time. So let's jump in. So, of course, we have the Beatitudes here, and I'm not going to go through those. We'll save those for another one. But chapter 5 has kind of a focus, and a focus kind of centers around issues of the heart, at least from my perspective. Starts out here, we get to verse 13, believers are salt and light. You are the salt of the earth. And then, of course, verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city situated on a hill cannot be hidden. Well, salt, let's go back to the salt part. Salt has many uses, but in the Old Testament, it's most often used as a purifying agent. So think of salt along with purifying, purity. And as the salt of the earth, Jesus' disciples are to purify a corrupt world through their example of righteous living and their proclamation of the gospel. Now, on this point here about you are the light of the world. Now, if you look at it here, a disciple should no more conceal his righteousness or the gospel message than a glowing city should douse its light at night. If you see a city on a hill at night, it's going to be glowing because the lights are going to be on, right? Well, this reference to giving light for all that's written here combines with the reference to the world to show that Christ's ministry is intended for all people. Not just the Jews and not just his disciples, but for all people. Now we get into the section where Christ fulfills the law in verses 17 through 20, and Jesus defends himself against charges that he has defied the laws here. And he insists that he came to fulfill both the law and the prophets, which together amount to the entire Old Testament. Then he talks about murder and how murder actually begins where? In the heart. In the heart. It says do not murder, clearly. It also says, though, if you're angry with your brother or sister, you'll be subject to judgment. So basically it says you need, before you can come and be forgiven, you first got to go to your brother or sister and ask for forgiveness from them. These are issues of the heart, okay? This is where is your heart? What direction is your heart leading? Do you have a forgiving heart, or do you have a judgmental heart? Or do you have an angry heart? All right. Adultery. When you get to the section about adultery, verse 27 through 30 here. But it says, do not commit adultery, clearly. But it says, but I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery. Where? In his heart. Your heart. Issues of the heart here. Then it moves on to divorce practices. Now, of course, it says, I tell you, everyone who divorces his wife, except in the case of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery. Now, Jesus here is challenging a very loose rabbinic paraphrase of Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 1, that distorted the original meaning of the text. So in the hands of the rabbis, Deuteronomy 24:1 greatly multiplied the number of offenses that could justify divorce. For instance, rabbinic commentaries on Deuteronomy 24 cites that minor complaints such as a wife's fading beauty or her tendency to burn food as legitimate grounds for divorce. Can you imagine? My wife burnt dinner tonight. I think I'm going to divorce her. That's pretty sorry right there. However, Jesus kept true to Deuteronomy 24:1, and he insisted that sexual immorality is legitimate grounds for divorce. People who divorce for frivolous reasons, though, and remarry are guilty of adultery since their original marriage covenant has not been genuinely dissolved legitimately. So that's an explanation of that. And of course, he goes through the issue like, tell the truth, don't be a liar. Go the second mile, go above and beyond. Don't just do the minimum of what you have to. Go above and beyond. If anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him the other. Somebody takes your shirt, give them your coat. Somebody, you have to walk a mile for somebody, walk two with them instead. And love your enemies. He says, love your enemies. And that's a stark contrast to a lot of thought process that went along in Old Testament thinking. Loving your enemies. Love your neighbor. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. It's a command. This is not a suggestion. It's a command. We get to chapter 6. And chapter 6 has a theme in it as well, I've noticed. And that theme has to do with God's glory, not yours. In other words, secrecy in a way. And let's get into that. How to give. This is the first section of chapter 6. How to give. Well, how are you supposed to give? Well, you're not supposed to sound a trumpet and letting everybody know, hey, I just gave this poor dude $1. Hey, everybody, look what I just did. You're not supposed to toot your own horn, so to speak, right? And it says you're supposed to give in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Well, how are you supposed to pray? Well, there was a whole movie about it called War Room about how you're supposed to pray, and this lady right here is actually representing, and she's actually doing exactly what the Bible tells you to. When you pray, go into your private room, shut your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. It tells you don't babble about stuff because God already knows the things that you need before you even ask him. And then he says, here's how you pray. It gives you the Lord's Prayer here. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And it goes on from there. So then it tells you how are you supposed to fast. Because people in Jesus' time, and even people now, when they fast, they would put smear dirt all over them and be all gloomy and dark. So people would know that they're fasting because they look kind of all terrible, right? So basically he's saying, no, don't do this when you fast. Put oil on your head, wash your face, clean yourself up so that people don't think, it's not obvious to people that you're fasting. Do it in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Right? Right. And he talks about possessions here. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. It goes on to say, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So here Jesus, number one, he's emphasizing the fleeting value of worldly wealth. And he's also teaching that one's heart here truly belongs to what it most treasures. Since a disciple is to love God with all of his heart, love for material possessions and riches is a subtle form of idolatry. Dun, 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 there's that word. And of course, he gives us the cure for anxiety. So if anybody's out there very anxious tonight, the cure for anxiety is right here in the Bible, in the end of Matthew chapter 6. Can any of you add 1 moment to his lifespan by worrying? The answer is clearly no to that. So here's your answer, though. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be provided for you. And then we get into chapter 7, and it starts out with a section about not judging, and then it works on into the section about ask, search, and knock, with a lot of people know. But there's this one verse that's stuck kind of right in between, sandwiched in there, and it's verse 6, chapter 7, verse 6. A friend of mine asked me about this tonight, and my first thoughts on this, I was like, well, it's probably talking about not being wasteful in a way, I guess. And I got to thinking about it a little deeper. I was like, no. Look at these pearls. What does a pearl? What does a pig have to do with a pearl? Well, the answer is nothing really. It's useless to. So why would you give something that's important to you to a pig? Because it's useless to them, right? So don't give away the good stuff because somebody's just going to take it and thinking it's useless and trample on something good. But it actually goes a little deeper than this. I started reading some commentators. I was like, I wonder what other people think about this. So I dug in verse 6. Of course, it's on your screen there so you can read it. But what is holy here probably refers to sacrificial meat, because dogs would devour it insensibly without appreciating its sacredness. Now, in Jesus' allegory here, the sacrificial meat symbolizes his own sacred teachings. The dogs symbolized the wicked who disregard the value of his teaching. Now, first century teachers would refer to pearls symbolically to speak of insightful and valuable teachings. Consequently, the pearls here symbolize Jesus' teachings given by the disciples. The pigs were ritually unclean animals, so they symbolize the wicked and the unclean people. Pigs eat spoiled food, but they have no appreciation for pearls at all because they're pretty much just useless to them, just as the wicked consume wicked pleasures but disregard the gospel. The contempt for the gospel is pictured by the pig trampling on the pearls underfoot. That pigs may turn against the one offering the pearls shows that contempt for the gospel message can become contempt for the gospel messenger, as has often happened in history. And I'm clearly reminded of those who are martyred, those who are talked down upon, those who are slandered simply for their own beliefs. People are killed simply because we proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ. And then, of course, the book wouldn't be complete without the two foundations, the rock and the sand, and also entering the kingdom. In verse 13, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who go through it. How narrow is the gate and difficult the road that leads to life, and few find it. I'm reminded of the movie Facing the Giants, and what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to put the clip of the movie Facing the Giants in the description below, so you can go to click on that link, and I put that link is going to connect you to that film clip where the coach is coaching his kicker on the straight and narrow way. I hope this has helped you in your studies tonight. If it has, click the like button, subscribe button. Of course, click the little jingle bell so you get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow, for another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. We'll see you then.